welcome to John's Briefs here on the channel. Glad you're with us. I have a treat for you today. I have Carey Dudenhofer from Carey Concealed, who also is the co-director of the ASP Instructor Certification and one of the most qualified expert witnesses in America. And we're going to talk about some fun stuff about being an expert witness and what it's taught us.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
Hi, Carey. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. This is one of my favorite subjects to talk about.
And, it's funny. I think, when people think about this, you do a good bit of expert witness work just as part of your work. And you're mostly doing that in Washington State, right?
Most of my cases have been in Washington State, but I've had any of my paid cases have been in Washington State. I've had several consulting cases outside the state that I haven't accepted.
I see. Oh, now there is my first question. And that's what we're going to talk about today then, is what percentage of cases that you consult on have you taken as an expert witness?
That's a good question.
Hey, I want all of you to recognize I didn't prepare her for this. She brought it up, so I want to talk about it.
I would say probably I've taken about 50% of the cases. Yeah, it's about half and half. Depending on how this next one goes, that might change that a little bit.
Okay.
Negative direction, but.
So tell me about where the yay or nay for you goes, because I'm going to bet people hear that and they hear you, like I take some cases and I don't. And I think a lot of people are going to hear that and think, well, she's cherry picking and she only takes cases she thinks she can win. And I know that's not how you do it. So would you explain?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I can see how it would seem like that. I think this job is the best job ever because I get to fully understand the job and I'm paid to fully understand the job before I accept it. And so when I get a call and they ask, hey, we're not sure if this is a case of justified self-defense, would you look at the discovery for us and give us an opinion? Sure. And I send them my fee schedule and CV and resume. And then we contract and then I get all discovery. And then I try to get everything turned around within 4 to 5 business days so I can get them an answer back as quickly as possible so they're not waiting. And I can usually give them a pretty good idea within just, it depends on how big the case is, but the amount of discovery in cases now is enormous because if you have 14 officers show up to the scene, that's 14 officers worth of badge cam videos and 3 to 5 hours worth of video for each officer. And I do watch all that. I don't have to, but I do watch all of it just to make sure that I'm not missing something. So that's how it usually goes. I get to find out whether or not I will work on the case, meaning whether I would be willing to support a claim of self-defense or not, based on my evaluation of the discovery. And it's my evaluation, but it's based on sound principles that, have been part of the British legal system, the American legal system. Masada, you've been doing this for 50 something years now. So they're based on solid principles. I'm standing on other people's shoulders, that's for sure.
So when you say I haven't taken a case, basically that kind of means, hey, an attorney has approached you and said, hey, we think we have a case of self-defense here. And then you come back and say, I don't think you do. And so you're not going to hire me as an expert in this case because I'm going to tell you that my expert report is going to show that this is not justified conduct. Exactly.
Yeah, it's tough to call. It's tough to have to call your client back and tell them, hey, listen, this is straight up murder. And here's why. Not even manslaughter. Straight up. That's tough. That's tough to be able to do. And it's tough. I think part of it's tough because there's so many misconceptions, even within the legal community, about what is justified self-defense and what isn't. And so that's hard to do. Call them up and give them the bad news.
Yeah. So I'll tell a brief story case that I ended up passing on, and So I think like you, it's not a case that I passed on. It's a case that I was honest with the attorney about. And so
Yeah.
he's like, hey, I'm not going to hire you. And I was like, and I get it. I wouldn't hire me either in your shoes, because I think it goes back to, and listen, everybody, I'm Sharon Carey is one of my very, very good friends, dear friends. She's actually one of the kind of senior leaders of active self-protection. When active self-protection gets together to do things, it's Carey is kind of one of the five-headed dragon of the top of ASP. That's a pretty good, pretty good description, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, yeah. I love it.
So and like we do a lot of this stuff together, and we just talk about this stuff. So like I had a case of a defense attorney who called me for a video that had been on the channel and needed some, oh, hey John, I need an expert witness, and I know you've already analyzed this, but I think there's going to be some other information that will change your mind. And I said, okay, counselor, I mean, if you want to talk to me about it and you want to send me that, I'll send you my fee schedule. I said, if you send me that, now I will give you a brief consult. Like, I'll look things over and hey, what's your big 3 items? I'm not going to watch hours and hours and hours and hours of badge cams. I'm not going to read 500 pages of discovery, but I'll look through the general facts of the case and give you my thoughts to see whether you want to talk to me. And I came back to this attorney. I looked over, he had a cell phone video that I hadn't seen and a couple of witness statements. And I literally called him back and I said, now, okay, listen, adults in the room, right? So kids shouldn't be watching these videos. So be aware of that. I said, counselor, my official recommendation is that I believe the legal position that your client is in is what is called hammer fucked. And so if the prosecutor offers you anything in the world short of premeditated murder, I would take it. And I would take it joyfully, and anything short of that. If they offer you any kind of plea, hey, we'll give you murder 1 and 10 years, I'd take it. Because I think you're going to lose in court here. And because I think what your client did was no good. So of course he did not hire me. And okay, so it's a case I didn't take, right?
Yep. I know the case you're talking about, and I know it well. And when I get a call and it's the attorney explaining to me what their narrative is and asking or they're confident that when I see discovery, I will see it that same way. And they'd like to get a contract signed with me and we can do this quick. And it's just going to be a quick case, write a quick report, and we're good. And that's without me seeing anything. And I always know to be a little wary when they say, here's our narrative, this will be quick. Because there isn't a lot quick. If there isn't a ton of evidence, it can be quick, but there's a lot of thinking that goes into it also. But I know the case you're talking about very well. That was my very first call that said, here's the narrative.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah. I was like, wow.
Well, and when I hear this, hey, I'm looking for somebody that, this is my contention and I'm looking for an expert who agrees with me, that sets off a huge red flag for me. It sets off an immediate red flag because I get it. An attorney has a job, right? And the attorney's job is to represent their client. And it doesn't matter if the attorney believes the client is innocent or guilty. Their job is to represent the interests of their client. My job is to represent the interests of the finder of fact.
Yes.
And as the expert witness, as somebody who stands in court, whether it's a jury, the judge, the attorneys in the beginning, I tell them all the time when we start talking on the phone, listen, my first job is to educate you because you're an expert in the law and in the process of the law, but I don't expect you to be an expert in self-defense and an expert in use of force. I am an expert in those things, expert in firearms, expert in use of force, expert in self-defense, expert in empty-handed skills in my case. So I am only an inch deep. I don't have this huge, broad understanding of the law that you do, but I am a mile deep and an inch wide in this particular issue. And so my first job is to educate you so you understand very well what the standards are. Then it's to educate the other side's attorney and hopefully let them see that. Hopefully at that point you go, oh no, we need to settle this or we need to get rid of this or whatever, depending on if it's criminal or civil, because I've worked both of those. Then if we get there, which is super rare, my job is to educate the finder of fact, the jury or the judge. And I adore standing in front of a jury because I'm confident that I know what I've got and I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so let's do this. So when they come and say, I have a theory, I go, counselor, my job is not to help bolster a theory. My job is to educate you on the issues.
Yes.
And so, hey, if we can do that, awesome. I I can think of another case that I got a consult on that I ended up taking. That was, again, hey, I've got this other issue of firearms here. I have somebody that the other side has made this claim, and I need some help about whether that claim is true or not about firearms. That particular issue, the claim was that a man had died by what the medical examiner said was suicide, and he had taken a Glock and stuck it in his mouth. And they found him at his desk in his office, and blah blah blah, with a gun registered to him, state of Connecticut, and all these things. The family said it wasn't suicide. Somebody came and made it look like that, and you could tell it was suicide because if he had held onto the gun, then it would have given powder burns and it would have burned his hand and hurt him. And I was like, well, dude, what's going on there is they just don't understand firearms at all, because if you understand firearms at all, that's just stupid. And wait, what? So then I had to do it, and he wanted it on video, and he wanted all these things. Okay, I'll take that case. But now the attorney was like, I don't really, it wouldn't at all. That's I can show you that on camera. Like, here's a YouTube video of me doing it already. I could do it again for you with that, that gun, with that ammo and all that stuff if you want. In controlled environments, multiple people. We ended up having to do all that. So that educational piece is really, really fun. When you do accept a case, how long do these things take?
Oh my goodness. Longer than I thought could ever be possible. So my very first case is actually still ongoing. And it's went through its first, but it's on appeal now. And that'll come back around probably early 2025. So it'll be a while for that one. So yeah, and I've been working on that one since, I can't remember now if it's, I think it's 2020 or 2021. Anyway, no, it must be early 2021, I guess. Anyway, it's a long time. And it will, when it kicks up again in early 2025, that it'll probably be going for 1.5 to 2 years before it's completely settled. So they can be short, or they can be a long time.
What's typical? What do you find is typical?
Typical is about a year. Well, I'd say 12 to 14 months is pretty typical.
Yeah, that's what I find too, is that what you end up getting is you get this idea of, oh, okay, we need somebody to disclose. So are you somebody we're going to disclose? And what's your theory? Okay, so, here are the issues that I see. Here's the evidence that you've presented to me. I've seen this stuff. I can write a report for you. Great. I want to see the report. Cool. Here's a report. Here's a bill for the report. All right, great. Now I got to disclose you. Now we're going to wait around for a few months and see if they want to depose you. Some, depositions are way more common in civil trials than they are in criminal trials, but they can happen in criminal trials too. They can, for the experts, and like, okay, cool. And then, well, that went, and then we've got pretrial motions, and then we have this diversion program. And then the next thing we know, we got this other thing. Oh, we had this sidebar issue that had to get dealt with. And next thing you know, you're like, hurry up and wait. I'm like you. I have one case. It's a federal case that started in like early 2021. I got hired for, and then disclosed. And here's my report. Great. I mean, the report went back and forth with the attorneys on that one, especially because it's a federal AUSA. And so he's like, do you have an opinion on this? He was very careful not to like steer my expert opinion. They have to be super careful, right? But he's like, do you have an opinion on this issue, John? Yes, I do. Would you like that in the report? Yes, please. Okay, let me add that portion in there. There you go. John, do you have an opinion on this particular issue on that? I do have an opinion on that particular issue. Tappity, 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 tappity. Let me write that up and stick that in the report. So that report went through 30 revisions, something like that. And so, yeah, so they can go.
I don't know about you.
And then that trial got derailed by an ancillary issue, like a side issue in this trial that the judge said, I want to litigate and get that issue decided before we continue this trial. So it's going to be 2 years of litigating that issue that I'm not involved in, and then they'll get back to me on this issue. So,
yeah, and when they want those reports and stuff, that they usually need them real quick. It's usually like, in my cases, it's usually when as trial is imminent, and they'll need an addition to a report, or an addendum to a report, or clarification on something. And, sometimes they need it. And can you get that to me in 2 hours? And sometimes I can't. Most of the time I can, because when I know the trial's coming up, I just kind of block out anything in front of that and don't travel for about 3 weeks before the trial, just to make sure. One thing I should say too, it's kind of funny, this work, I think, because I'm not short on opinions on anything. I have lots of opinions and I'm happy to share them. It was hard for me to understand a lot of the early calls I would get. Were from like either the paralegal in the office that had taken a class from me, or their, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, cousin had taken a class. And so they would call and ask questions, and I would answer the questions. But I would always pass them off to somebody that was more experienced, that I knew, that had actually taken cases. And I didn't even realize that, those early things, I was learning a lot through those. I was, seeing discovery, and I was speaking with clients. And even though I didn't take the case as a paid case, I was still learning a lot from it. So I think there's a lot. If you have an opinion on a lot of things, sometimes people want to know what they are, but you always have to base it in evidence and the principles. The I don't like the term rules of engagement, but the standards of personal protection, what's considered justified and part of that canon.
So here's my thing on this stuff, guys. There are experts that I know out there that do work as expert witnesses that will take a case with an already preset narrative. That you want me to agree to that narrative? Sure, I'll agree to that narrative and put that in writing for you for a fee. That to me is highly unethical behavior. And so you should be looking, if you, God forbid, ever get in one of these, or as an attorney, you should be looking for somebody who is willing to educate you and disagree with you. And then you go, yeah, I thank you for that opinion. I'm not going to hire you. Or maybe thank you for that education. I'm going to go back and see if I can get a plea or I can get a settlement here, because I appreciate the education. And if you're not getting that, well, then what the heck are you paying them for? You're paying them to agree with you and be a yes man, and that's no good. So I think for those of you, God forbid, you ever get in a defensive gunfight or something like that, that's a question to ask if you're going to hire an expert witness. Tell me about cases you haven't taken and why, and interview them, not just, please God, will you help me, but are you the right person to help me? Do you have the right experience to help me? And what are you going to educate me on and I need help here with? So Carey, I love these conversations because you are such an expert in it. I got a bunch more questions for Carey. Next week, I'm going to talk about with Carey. I'm going to jump her with a question. And so we'll talk to you next week.